Hey, it's Jeff, and I'm at the Blossom Hill Cemetery in Concord, New Hampshire. The cemetery was opened in the 1800s, and it's the final resting place for former New Hampshire governors, former New Hampshire senators, former New Hampshire congressmen, and other people of note from New Hampshire. So I'm going to check it out, see if I can find the tombstones, and tell you a little bit about each individual. So stick around. This is the final resting place of New Hampshire's 45th governor, Benjamin Franklin Prescott. He was governor from 1877 to 1879, as you can read on his tombstone. Also buried here is his wife, the former New Hampshire First Lady, Mary Noyes. During his time as governor, he amended the New Hampshire state constitution several times. And he was also involved with the authorization to construct the New Hampshire State Prison, which, believe it or not, is still functioning today, even though it was built in 1879. And let's take a quick walk around his stone. A nice tombstone. Around the back, nice and smooth, decorative. Edging. Under this nice tree. Former Governor Prescott, rest in peace. This is the final resting place of New Hampshire's 32nd governor, Onslow Stearns. He was governor from 1869 to 1871. He was big on promoting railroad expansion and manufacturing expansion. And this is his tombstone, his main marker. But if you go behind here to the left where it says Father, that would be himself. He's buried at this marker as he lived from 1810 to 1878. And then that would be his first lady, the wife. And let's go around and take a look at the backside. This is quite a nice monument, I must say. Nice monument for sure. If we walk around to the side and the front, I'm not sure if this tree here was planted much later, or I mean, it may have, I don't think it's been here as long as he's been gone, but anyway, rest in peace, Governor Stearns. Here is the gravesite of New Hampshire's 16th governor, and he was also a U.S. Senator from New Hampshire, Isaac Hill. He was the 16th governor from 1836 to 1839, and he was a U.S. Senator before that. He was Senator from 1831 to 1836. So during his time as governor, he improved the state railroad system, was kind of his claim to fame. So let's take a look at his stone. I'm presuming these are some other members of his family. This is a nice little plot, and you can see that's probably him right there, but over here it's the actual main stone, the marker, with the two flags at the bottom. We'll take a walk around this one and see what it looks like. Isaac Hill, born at Charlestown, and Walter Russell Hill, Georgiana Toscan, I think. Toscan. Those are the other names on the stone. Probably relatives, brothers, sisters, people like that. And this is a nice little plot, I would think. It's a nice, of course, they're all well taken care of here. I was chatting with a couple of the maintenance guys here, and they were very helpful to me, very cordial, because I got lost trying to find some of these stones, and they led me right to this particular area of the Blossom Hill Cemetery, so I could find a few of them. It's a nice location to Spend eternity. Scenic location. Rest in peace, former Governor Isaac Hill. Here is the burial plot for two of New Hampshire's former political leaders. The center stone is Edward H. Rollins, and he was a U.S. congressman from 1861 to 1867, essentially during the Civil War, and then he was a U.S. senator from 1877 to 1883. And if you just look a little bit to the right, there's a smaller stone here for Frank West Rollins, New Hampshire's 47th governor from 1899 to 1901. And his sort of claim to fame, I guess you might say, was he was big on promoting tourism in the state. He created a local tradition which still lasts to these days called Old Home Weeks or Old Home Days. Some towns do it in one day. Some towns have a whole week full of parades and festivals and things like that, a way to kind of remind you of where you came from. So this is very interesting to find the two of them together. Of course, they were related, obviously. So I'd like to say rest in peace to former Senator Rollins and former Governor Rollins. The final resting place for a U.S. Senator from New Hampshire, William Eaton Chandler. He was a U.S. Senator from 1887 to 1907. He replaced Senator Austin Pike, who had died in office. But prior to this, prior to being a U.S. Senator, he was the Secretary of the Navy under former President Chester Arthur, who I recently featured on my channel when I took a look at the former president's gravesite in New York. So, walking around the stone, William E. Chandler. So this is definitely the Chandler family. Lots of people by the name of Chandler are buried here, all from the 19th century. Elvira, the wife of George Chandler. And around this side, we have here Margaret Tucker, Francis Edward. They were babies. They died very young. One was 10 weeks, one was 20 months. All right. I'll take the opportunity to say rest in peace for Senator Chandler. This is the final resting place of George Gilman Fogg. He was a U.S. Senator from New Hampshire, but he only served for 1 year. He was appointed to this position in 1866, served till 1867, upon the resignation of Daniel Clark. So that's a fairly substantial stone. It's a very nice one. A faithful advocate of equal liberty and exact justice to all, regardless of distinction of race or color, without distinction of race or color. It's kind of worn, so I can't quite read it, but maybe if I get closer, you might be able to read it. Hold it for a second, you might see it. It's a nice stone. It's got a lot of carvings on it. Let's walk around the edge of it here, and to the back, under a tree. And there's the basic information. Talks about his time in the U.S. Senate. It also says he was the U.S. Minister to Switzerland, is what it looks like it says to me. Editor of a newspaper. Secretary of State for New Hampshire. So this individual served a lot of public service during his time. Right under this tree. What a nice place to spend eternity. Okay. Okay. Rest in peace, Senator Fogg. This is the final resting place of New Hampshire's 65th governor, Robert Oscar Blood. He was governor during World War II, 1941 to 1945. New Hampshire's governor on the front line, so to speak. He was very active at promoting the use of World War II food rationing. And this is his main tombstone here, which is well kept up. Being the World War II governor, I'm sure people have a lot of memories of him here in New Hampshire. I'll walk around the actual stone, which basically has the last name on the front of it. However, if you look over there by the road, you see some stones that are in the ground, and his is one of those. So let's take a walk over here, and I'll show you which one that is. There he is, Governor Blood, who was a captain in the U.S. Army, according to this. Died in 1975. So this is his headstone. This is the family plot stone for the 65th governor. Governor Blood, rest in peace. A very simple stone with just the last name of Robert William Upton. He was a U.S. Senator basically only for 1 year. He was appointed to replace Senator Toby, who had died in office. However, he also, later in his point, there's his name on the back, later in his life he was named the Special Ambassador to Liberia. So this is former Senator Robert Upton and his wife and their daughter. He was a senator from 1953 to 1954. So, very simple stone. But again, he was only sort of a fill-in, so to speak. Rest in peace, Senator Upton. This is the final resting place for Jacob Harold Gallinger. He was a New Hampshire congressman from 1885 to 1889, then a U.S. senator from 1891 to 1918. This is his family plot stone. This may be his stone, I think, right there. And then if you go around the back, it gives some further information about the family and himself. Perpetual care, it says. So, sort of shooting into the sun for this one, so it might be kind of dark. See if I get it from an angle, but let's see. Jacob H. Gallinger, United States Senator from March 4th, 1891 to the time of his death. Mary Bailey Gallinger, Ralph Ernest Gallinger, Jeanette King Gallinger, all family members. And so he served rather a long time in the U.S. Senate. Rest in peace, Senator Gallinger. This gravesite does not belong to a governor, but it does belong to a very important person in New Hampshire's past. Parker Pillsbury, September 22nd, 1809 to July 7th, 1898. He was an abolitionist, fought hard to eliminate slavery during the 19th century. So even though he didn't get elected governor of New Hampshire, he did play an important part in the process of trying to free the slaves. Now we come upon the final resting place of a woman who many consider to be a national hero. Christa McAuliffe, the Concord teacher who was picked to become the first teacher in space. And she died in the space shuttle tragedy in 1986. And her stone, as you can see, is very well visited. Down below you can see someone left a little space astronaut. Other little mementos. Of course, she was on the Challenger, and the world watched as in less than 2 minutes off the launching pad, The Challenger exploded, and the entire crew was lost, sadly. And here in New Hampshire, we mourned for a long time, and we still do. Final resting place for Krista McAuliffe. Rest in peace. That just about wraps up my visit to the Blossom Hill Cemetery in Concord, New Hampshire. This very large cemetery took a lot of time to go through, but I did find the final resting places of some important people from New Hampshire's history. Hope you found this video interesting, and you'll be seeing more history type videos here on my channel as time goes on, and maybe some more cemetery visits. So thanks for taking the time to watch this. If you've made it this far, click like, subscribe if you'd like. I'd be very happy for you to do that. So that'll do it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you again next time.